You've heard them 1,000 times. On posters, in office halls, in graduation speeches, hustle hard, sleep later, no excuses, just results. These quotes sound like wisdom, but what if they're actually traps? In this video, we're going to gently unpack 30 of the most iconic motivational sayings that capitalism has sold us, not to shame anyone who believed them, because most of us did, but to ask, who do these quotes really serve? If you've ever felt exhausted chasing an ideal that never feels enough, this might help you see things more clearly. Winners never quit, and quitters never win. They told you that quitters never win, so you held on. You dragged your feet through burnout. You silenced the urge to stop, and you swallowed the guilt of wanting to leave, because quitting, they said, was failure. But they never told you who wrote the rules. Winners never quit isn't just a motivational saying. It's a slogan, engineered, repeated, weaponized. It's not wisdom passed down with love. It's propaganda dressed as encouragement, designed not to uplift you, but to extract from you. Because in the logic of capitalism, your worth isn't measured by joy, rest, or authenticity. It's measured by output, by how long you can run without asking why. The system wants you to believe that persistence is a moral good, regardless of direction, that the ability to keep going, no matter the cost, is a sign of greatness. But what if that's a lie? What if the refusal to quit isn't strength, but compliance? A convenient form of obedience that keeps the machine humming while you quietly unravel. They don't want you to quit, not because they care about your growth, but because they rely on your labor, your silence, your belief in the story that quitting is for the weak. Because if you believe that, you won't stop, you won't rest, you won't question. You'll keep grinding away at dreams that aren't even yours. And so, they dangle quotes like carrots. Never quit, push through, knowing that exhaustion makes you easier to manage, knowing that shame is cheaper than supervision. Because the moment you believe quitting is shameful, they don't need chains. They have your loyalty. But here's the truth. Quitting isn't the enemy. Sometimes, quitting is clarity. It's rebellion. It's the first breath after surfacing from someone else's dream. It's saying, I deserve better than this. I deserve a life that belongs to me. Capitalism survives on endless motion. But you don't have to. You don't owe your spirit to a slogan. You don't owe your exhaustion to a system that never loved you. And you sure as hell don't owe your life to a lie that profits from your pain. So, what they call quitting, that might just be your first act of freedom. Failure is not an option. They say, failure is not an option. And at first, it sounds empowering, like a battle cry, like something heroes say right before they conquer the impossible. But let's ask, who decided that? Who benefits when you're too afraid to fail? This phrase wasn't designed to motivate. It was designed to control. It's the kind of statement that looks good on a poster in a break room or in a startup's mission deck. Sharp, crisp, absolute. But underneath that clean certainty is a dirty lie. That failure is a flaw, a shame, a weakness. That mistakes make you disposable. That, if you fall, you forfeit your right to try again. This idea doesn't serve you. It serves the system. Because if failure is not an option, then you will work harder, longer, quieter. You'll overextend yourself, hide your exhaustion, suppress your questions. You'll take fewer risks, stay in toxic jobs, say yes to unreasonable demands, because failure has been made synonymous with moral collapse. Capitalism loves this mindset. It thrives on your fear of falling behind, your fear of not being good enough. If you internalize that failure means you're broken, then you'll pour yourself into proving your worth again and again, without ever asking, who am I doing this for? What if failure was never the enemy, but a natural part of becoming? What if the real danger isn't in failing, but in being too afraid to try? In systems built for profit, not people, fear is currency. And slogans like this, they keep the transaction going. Failure is not an option, turns you into a machine, perfectly replaceable, constantly optimized. But humans aren't machines. We're messy, adaptive, flawed. We grow from falling, not from pretending we never do. The more you fear failure, the more obedient you become, because fear keeps you quiet, keeps you small, keeps you working. So, let's be clear. This phrase isn't about excellence. It's about submission. It's about pushing you past your boundaries, keeping you in motion even when your mind and body beg for pause. It's a threat disguised as inspiration. But failure, real failure, that's where transformation lives. It's how we shed what doesn't fit. It's how we test the edges of who we are. When you fail honestly, you step outside the game. You stop playing by rules that were never written for your well-being. They want you to fear failure because the moment you embrace it, you become ungovernable. You stop measuring yourself by impossible standards. You stop apologizing for being human. So, maybe failure isn't just an option. It's a necessity, a rite of passage, a signal that you're trying, that you're alive, that you're learning. And the next time someone tells you failure is not an option, you'll know exactly what to say. That sounds like something someone rich and scared of losing power would say. Hustle hard, sleep later. It sounds admirable, like the anthem of dreamers, the creed of winners. But beneath the surface, it's anything but empowering. It's a mantra built to glamorize self-erasure, a sleek coat of paint over a rusting machine. It whispers that rest is a luxury, and sleep is something to be earned, not a human need. And if you believe that, they've already won. Because let's be honest, this quote wasn't made to inspire you. It was engineered to extract from you. Capitalism doesn't want you well rested. It wants you tired enough to keep working, but too tired to question why. It wants your nights, your weekends, your peace, packaged as ambition. It takes your exhaustion and rebrands it as virtue. And we applaud it. We reward people for working 16-hour days, for skipping sleep, for being always on, as if depletion is the highest form of discipline. But hustle culture doesn't serve your dreams. It hijacks them. It tells you that your value lies in constant motion, that if you just grind harder, success will come. That sleep is the enemy of greatness. But who benefits from this belief? Not you, not your health, not your relationships. The ones who benefit are the ones who profit from your fatigue. The companies, the bosses, the machine. And let's be clear, hustle isn't always about purpose. More often, it's about survival. You hustle to keep up with rent, with inflation, with expectations that keep rising while wages stay still. So, when they say, hustle hard, sleep later, what they really mean is, sacrifice your well-being so the system stays intact. They make overwork look noble so you won't notice its exploitation. What's dangerous is how deeply this idea has rooted itself in our self-worth. You skip meals and call it discipline. You miss family time and call it drive. You collapse and call it progress. And when you finally burn out, you blame yourself because the quote didn't leave room for rest. It only made space for shame. But the truth is, sleep is not weakness. Rest is not laziness. Taking a break doesn't mean you've given up. It means you're human. The body isn't a machine, and neither is your spirit. You weren't born to hustle until you collapse. You were born to live, to breathe, to sleep without guilt. So, the next time someone says, hustle hard, sleep later, ask yourself who profits from your fatigue, and then go get some rest. Not because you've earned it, but because you already deserve it. Be the hardest worker in the room. At first glance, it sounds like discipline, commitment, excellence, but look closer. This isn't about self-betterment. It's about self-sacrifice. It's about grinding yourself down to prove your worth, not to yourself, but to others, to bosses, to peers, to systems that praise burnout as brilliance. This quote has become a badge of honor in office posters and hustle feeds. But under the surface, it's not admiration, it's manipulation. It tells you to compete for approval instead of care, to win through overextension, to work while others sleep, rest, pause, because if you're not outworking them, you're falling behind, right? That's the lie. And it's a convenient one for employers and systems that profit from overwork. Capitalism thrives on comparative effort. If you're always aiming to be the hardest worker in the room, the bar keeps rising. There's no end, no ceiling, no moment of enough. You'll sleep less, stretch farther, push longer, not because it's meaningful, but because it's expected. Because if you slow down, you lose. Not just your edge, but your sense of value. And what's worse, this mindset turns everyone into a threat. Colleagues become rivals. Collaboration dies. Community thins. When you're trained to be the hardest worker, you stop asking if the work is worth doing in the first place. You stop questioning why the room is so quiet, why everyone looks so tired. This isn't motivation, it's fear. Fear of being seen as lazy, fear of being replaced, fear of being left behind in a race no one ever agreed to run. So you work harder, not wiser, longer, not better, and you lose sight of what enough feels like. But let's be clear, being the hardest worker in the room doesn't guarantee impact, or joy, or meaning. It guarantees exhaustion, and often, invisibility. Because the system doesn't reward effort, it rewards output, and even then, only sometimes. Your best might not be recognized. Your sacrifice might not be seen. Because when everyone's trying to be the hardest worker, no one notices when you disappear. You don't have to earn your right to rest. You don't need to compete for permission to breathe. You're not here to prove you can endure more pain than the person next to you. The point of life is not to win a silent competition for who can suffer the most. So, next time you hear, be the hardest worker in the room, pause, ask, what room? Whose rules? Who's keeping score? And do you even want the prize? Pressure makes diamonds. You've heard it everywhere, from locker rooms to leadership seminars. It's meant to inspire you, to push you, to convince you that stress is a gateway to greatness. But what they don't tell you is that under pressure, diamonds are formed. People crack. This quote is seductive because it sounds scientific, objective, but it's a misuse of metaphor, a dangerous one, because it implies that your worth is forged through suffering, that the more you endure, the more valuable you become. That stress, pain, and overwork are prerequisites for success, that you can't shine unless you're crushed first. It's a lie dressed up in inspiration. And like many lies under capitalism, it's convenient. Convenient for bosses who pile deadlines on your back. Convenient for systems that refuse to provide support but praise your resilience. If they can convince you that pressure is good for you, they never have to question the pressure they created. The truth is, pressure doesn't always make diamonds. Sometimes it causes burnout, breakdown, collapse. It creates anxiety, panic attacks, sleepless nights. It steals your focus, your health, your peace. And when the cracks appear, they don't say the pressure was too much. They say you weren't enough. Capitalism loves this quote because it makes your suffering your responsibility. If you break, it's not the system. It's you. You didn't rise to the challenge. You weren't built for it. You didn't want it badly enough. But diamonds don't have bills to pay. Diamonds don't raise children. Diamonds don't cry in the bathroom after back-to-back shifts. You're not a gem. You're a person. And pressure, over time, doesn't polish you. It erodes you. It chips away at your softness, your joy, your curiosity. It turns life into a series of stress tests, where survival is mistaken for success, where silence under pressure is mistaken for strength. You don't have to break to prove you're worthy. You don't need to collapse to be seen. Growth can come from care, from safety, from rest. We've just been told that's weakness, because rested people ask questions. Rested people resist. Rested people remember what enough feels like. So, the next time someone tells you pressure makes diamonds, ask who's applying the pressure and who profits from you staying silent under it. You have the same 24 hours as Beyoncé. On paper, it's true. In reality, it's a weapon. This quote doesn't motivate. It manipulates. It reduces inequality to a matter of time management, as if every person wakes up with the same resources, same access, same freedom, as if the world is fair, and the only thing separating you from a global icon is hustle. It's one of capitalism's favorite lies. That success is purely a result of how you use your time, not who your parents were, not what zip code you grew up in, not your health, your race, your gender, your debt, your trauma. No, just time, equal and neutral. And if you're not thriving, it must be because you wasted yours. This quote gaslights people into blaming themselves for systemic failure. It makes burnout feel like laziness. It makes poverty feel like a personal flaw. It turns survival into a competition and struggle into shame. Because if Beyoncé made it, what's your excuse? But Beyoncé doesn't do her own taxes. She doesn't answer her own emails. She has a team. A small company, really. Handling everything from childcare to choreography. Her 24 hours are not your 24 hours. Her time is protected, curated, leveraged. Yours might be split between multiple jobs, unpaid caregiving, navigating broken healthcare systems, or simply trying to stay afloat. This quote erases the invisible labor most people carry. It ignores structural oppression. It glorifies efficiency while pretending that exhaustion is just poor planning. It celebrates elite success while dismissing collective struggle. Capitalism loves this mindset because it keeps you isolated, ashamed, focused on fixing yourself instead of questioning the system. When everything is a matter of personal discipline, there's no room to talk about equity, no room to ask why some people are buried in student debt while others inherit wealth, why some have to hustle just to survive while others have safety nets they'll never even notice. The truth is, time isn't equal, not in how we get to use it, not in what it costs us, not in what it gives back. And pretending otherwise is a cruel joke disguised as empowerment. You don't need to become Beyoncé. You need rest, community, access, fairness. You need a system that doesn't pit you against yourself. So, the next time someone tells you, you have the same 24 hours, you can say, "No, I have mine, and I deserve to use them without shame." Success is a choice. That's what they tell you, like it's a light switch you forgot to flip. Like all you had to do was want it hard enough, try harder, wake up earlier, be more disciplined, because in the world they built, if you're not successful, it's your fault. This phrase is a masterpiece of capitalist gaslighting. It shrinks a complex web of systems, inequality, racism, generational poverty, medical debt, mental illness, into a single decision. It makes it seem like everyone starts from the same line, runs the same race, and gets the same rewards if they just keep going. But we don't. Some start miles behind, some carry weights, some aren't even allowed on the track. Success as a choice erases that reality. It turns privilege into merit and luck into virtue. It turns struggle into laziness and setbacks into excuses. If you believe success is simply a matter of choice, then you won't ask what's keeping people from choosing it. You won't look at the barriers. You'll blame the person, not the system. Capitalism loves this mindset because it keeps you looking inward. It keeps you fixing yourself, your habits, your mindset, your attitude, instead of fixing the world, instead of asking why housing is unaffordable, why education is a luxury, why healthcare bankrupts families. It keeps you climbing ladders that are missing rungs and telling you to just climb better. And it's cruel, because when life doesn't work out, when the job doesn't come, or the business fails, or your body gives out, this quote doesn't comfort you. It condemns you. It says, you chose wrong. It makes pain feel deserved, failure feel earned. It isolates you in your struggle and shames you for not becoming a self-made success story. But here's the truth. Success is not a choice. It's a system. And that system is rigged. It rewards some and punishes others. Not always based on effort, but often on access, on legacy, on connections, on things you were never given the chance to choose. You can still work hard, still dream, still push, but do it knowing the truth, that the system wasn't built for fairness. It was built for preservation, to protect those already winning, and to convince everyone else they simply didn't try hard enough. So, the next time someone says, success is a choice, ask them what they started with. Ask them who they know. Ask them what they'd have without a safety net. Because success isn't just a staircase. It's how many doors are locked along the way. No excuses, just results. It sounds sharp, clean, efficient, like a motto carved into stone by someone who's already made it. But when you hear it enough times, you begin to realize it's not just a quote, it's a threat. Because in the world of capitalism, excuses aren't just discouraged, they're dehumanized. There's no room for context, no space for why. Illness, grief, burnout, inequality, trauma, none of it matters. All that matters is output. You either deliver or you don't. And if you don't, well, that's on you. This phrase turns every missed deadline into a moral failing, every human limit into a flaw. It forces you to erase your own boundaries just to keep up, to keep showing up, no matter what you're carrying. Because the minute you offer an explanation, you're seen as weak, as making excuses, as being replaceable. But here's what they don't tell you. The people who chant no excuses the loudest often had the most help. Safety nets, quiet privileges, the freedom to fail without falling. They're not superhuman. They're insulated. And when they tell you to stop making excuses, what they really mean is, don't talk about the parts of your life that make success harder. Don't complicate the narrative. Just perform. Capitalism loves this phrase because it strips away your humanity and packages your labor in metrics. It doesn't care what you're going through. It cares what you produce, and if you can't produce. It would rather silence your story than support your struggle. But let's be honest. Excuses are not the enemy. They're signals. They point to what's broken. They highlight where help is needed. They say, I'm overwhelmed, I'm in pain, I'm under-resourced, and ignoring them doesn't make you stronger. It makes you disappear. This quote teaches you to hide your needs, to keep your suffering invisible, to make your pain palatable. But you don't need to apologize for being human. You don't need to bury your story to meet someone else's standard. You deserve space to breathe, to explain, to be seen. Because in a world obsessed with results, it's easy to forget that behind every number is a person with context, a person with limits, a person with a story worth telling, even if it doesn't end in success. So, the next time someone throws no excuses at you, ask them this: why are you so afraid of hearing mine? Grind now, shine later. It sounds like discipline, like delayed gratification with a noble payoff. But too often, it's a contract you never signed, with a payout that only a few ever see. This phrase glorifies self-denial, encourages overwork, and tells you that sacrificing the present is a necessary toll to access the future. But under capitalism, that future is a mirage that keeps shifting further away. This mantra convinces you to postpone your joy, to ignore rest, to skip time with loved ones, to work while others sleep. Because someday, it says, the grind will pay off. But what it doesn't tell you is that the grind often becomes your life. That later may never arrive. That some people grind for decades and are discarded when they break, while others shine because they were handed the spotlight from the start. The phrase doesn't question the system, it reinforces it. It trains you to normalize exhaustion, to accept the erosion of your health, your relationships, your curiosity, all in service of a reward that may never come. It repackages exploitation as ambition, and burnout as proof of dedication. Capitalism loves this quote because it keeps you compliant. If you believe your suffering is a noble investment, you won't question who's collecting the interest. You won't pause to ask why rest feels guilty, or why joy feels undeserved. You'll push harder, stay longer, show up even when your body begs you not to, because you've been told that quitting means failure, and slowing down means falling behind. But the grind doesn't guarantee the shine. That part is luck, access, timing. That part is race, class, gender, geography. Some people get the spotlight even when they haven't stepped on stage. Others stay backstage forever, unseen, uncelebrated, unpaid. The deeper lie is this: that you're only valuable once you've made it, that your worth only crystallizes after suffering. But you are not an investment waiting to mature. You are not a project to prove. You don't need to delay your life to justify your existence. You can still grow, still strive, still dream, but not at the cost of your wholeness, not in a way that demands your disappearance. You deserve peace now, nourishment now, connection now. The present isn't just a waiting room for your future. It's the only thing you truly own. So, the next time someone says, grind now, shine later, ask them who controls the switch and whether they've ever had to grind at all. Comfort is the enemy of progress. It sounds bold, motivational, a challenge to push beyond your limits. But behind the punchy phrasing lies a quiet cruelty. The belief that safety, rest, and ease are obstacles to growth. That if you're comfortable, you must not be improving. That comfort makes you soft, complacent, weak. But let's pause. Who benefits from a world where comfort is demonized, where stillness is shameful, where you're taught that ease is a trap and struggle is the only noble path? It's not about your growth. It's about your grind. Because if comfort is the enemy, then pain is the plan. And if pain is the plan, then exploitation is easy to sell. Capitalism loves this quote because it keeps you uncomfortable, always reaching, always chasing, never satisfied. It teaches you to ignore your body, suppress your emotions, and push past your limits in pursuit of an abstract progress that rarely includes joy. You skip meals, miss sleep, say yes when you want to say no, because anything less would mean you're not trying hard enough. But comfort is not your enemy. It's your signal. It tells you when you're safe, when you're home, when your needs are met, and in a world that profits from your restlessness. Reclaiming comfort is an act of rebellion. This quote turns rest into guilt. It frames care as laziness. It suggests that if you're not constantly moving forward, you're falling behind. But what if progress isn't a straight line? What if it includes pauses, plateaus, and even turning back? What if true progress means knowing when to stop? Comfort creates space for reflection, for healing, for asking better questions. But that's exactly what makes it dangerous to systems that rely on your unthinking momentum. If you slow down, you might notice that the finish line keeps moving, that the rewards aren't as promised, that progress, as they've defined it, mostly benefits someone else. You are not failing if you're not constantly suffering. You are not less valuable when you feel at peace. Growth doesn't require pain. It requires presence. And sometimes, the most radical thing you can do in a culture of constant striving is to sit still and say, I have enough. So the next time someone tells you, comfort is the enemy of progress, ask them who told them that, and what they gain by never letting you rest. If you're not first, you're last. It sounds like a joke, a throwaway line from a movie, but somehow it became a mantra, a mindset, a worldview, one that says, unless you win, nothing else matters. That second place is failure. That effort without domination is meaningless. But this isn't inspiration. It's indoctrination. It trains you to see life as a race, every room a competition, every moment a ranking. It doesn't celebrate excellence. It breeds anxiety. Because in a world built on this logic, there's no room for nuance, no space for failure as learning, or for effort without applause. There's only room for winners and everyone else. Capitalism thrives on this belief. If you're always trying to be first, you'll work harder, faster, longer. You'll compete with your peers, not question the system. You'll internalize the lie that your value is based on outperforming others, even if you both deserve more. It's divide and conquer, dressed up as ambition. This mindset turns colleagues into rivals. It teaches you to fear being outshined, to hide your struggles, to see someone else's success as your own shortcoming, and it leaves you sprinting toward a finish line that only one person can cross, while pretending that the rest of us don't exist. It promotes scarcity, not abundance, separation, not solidarity. In this world, success is a lonely room, and to keep your spot, you can never stop running. It's not enough to reach the top. You have to protect it, defend it, outrun the next person who's catching up, and in doing so, you lose connection, community, compassion, because when you're always measuring, there's no space to be human. But life isn't a podium. Success isn't a zero-sum game. There is space for many people to thrive, to grow, to contribute, and you don't have to come in first to be enough. In fact, chasing first at all costs often means sacrificing everything that actually matters: your health, your relationships, your joy. You are not in a race, you're in a life. And the purpose of life isn't to beat everyone else to the end. It's to live while you're here, to connect, to create, to care, to redefine what enough means on your own terms. So, the next time someone says, "If you're not first, you're last," ask them, who made the rules and who profits when we all race each other to exhaustion? Pain is temporary. Pride is forever. It sounds like strength, like endurance, like something whispered to yourself in the final stretch of a hard race. But what if it's not resilience they're praising? What if it's compliance? This quote teaches you to suppress discomfort in the name of achievement, to glorify suffering as a stepping stone to glory. And under capitalism, that makes you useful, because a worker who pushes through pain is a worker who doesn't ask for rest. A student who sacrifices sleep is a student who never questions the pace. A person who accepts that pain is just a phase is easier to keep in motion. But here's what they never say out loud. Pain may be temporary, but sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it lingers, becomes chronic, becomes invisible but constant. And pride doesn't always arrive. Sometimes what comes instead is silence, or resentment, or collapse. This quote is designed to make pain feel noble, to make ignoring your body feel brave. But pain is a signal, not a flaw. It tells you something is wrong, that you've reached a boundary, that you need care, not discipline. Yet the system doesn't want you to listen. Because if you rest, you might recover. If you recover, you might reflect. If you reflect, you might resist. The phrase also assumes that pride is the reward worth chasing. But whose pride? For what? And at what cost? There are people who've pushed through pain for titles, for medals, for quotas, and found only emptiness on the other side. Because pride built on self-erasure is not pride. It's performance. Capitalism wraps suffering in silk. It gives you slogans to chant while you grind yourself down. It tells you the pain is worth it, because the pride will come. But pride doesn't pay medical bills. It doesn't fix broken sleep. It doesn't restore time lost with loved ones while you were too busy proving you could endure more than you should have ever been asked to. True resilience isn't about ignoring pain. It's about honoring it, listening to it, knowing when to stop, when to breathe, when to say, "I am not a machine built for endurance. I am a person built for balance." So, the next time someone says, "Pain is temporary, pride is forever," ask them how many bodies they had to burn through to believe that. Dream big, work bigger. It sounds noble, empowering, as if ambition is holy and hard work is the price of entry. But when you look closer, it's not just encouragement, it's expectation. And that expectation often turns dreams into burdens and work into worship. This quote tells you that dreaming isn't enough. You have to earn your right to dream through relentless effort. That any dream worth having must be pursued at maximum intensity. That the bigger the dream, the more you're required to suffer for it. But who decided that? And who profits when your dreams become another reason to overextend yourself in a capitalist system? Big dreams are often sold like lottery tickets, dangled in front of people who are told that hard work is the only thing standing between them and greatness. But this narrative erases reality. It ignores access, privilege, and the systemic barriers that make the grind much harder for some than others. It tells everyone to work bigger, but only rewards a few. And worse, it conflates size with worth. If your dream isn't massive, if you're not trying to be a CEO, a millionaire, a mogul, then it's seen as small, unambitious, less valid. This quote trains you to believe that unless your dream breaks records or builds empires, it doesn't matter. But what if your dream is peace, or time, or living slowly, with meaning? What if working bigger actually pulls you further from what you truly want? Dream big, work bigger becomes a trap when you feel like you can never do enough, when your dream starts to own you, when your to-do list gets longer than your reasons why, and the more you overwork in the name of your vision, the easier it becomes for systems to exploit your passion, because passionate people are easy to overuse. They won't complain, they'll sacrifice, they'll burn for the cause, until there's nothing left but ashes and a brand. Capitalism loves this. It teaches you to tie your dream to your identity, and your identity to your output. If you're not constantly building, scaling, growing, then what are you even doing? But building a life isn't the same as building an empire. You can have a dream without turning it into a job. You can grow without grinding. You can live without proving. So yes, dream if you want to. Dream beautifully, wildly, even impractically. But don't let someone else's definition of big define you. And don't let working bigger become a way of disappearing from your own life. Don't stop when you're tired. Stop when you're done. On the surface, it sounds like grit, like mental toughness, but peel it back, and it reveals something darker. The normalization of self-neglect. The expectation that exhaustion isn't a signal to rest, but an obstacle to overcome. This quote teaches you to ignore the body, to override your limits, to treat tiredness not as wisdom, but as weakness. And under capitalism, that's convenient. Because a worker who doesn't stop when they're tired is a worker who can be pushed further. A student who doesn't stop is one who internalizes guilt every time they close their eyes. But here's the truth. If you only stop when you're done, and the work is never ending, then you never stop. You keep going, you burn, you break. And when that happens, the system won't pause to thank you. It will simply replace you, because the finish line always moves. The checklist always expands. The reward always shifts just out of reach. Capitalism sells this quote as determination, but what it really promotes is disposability. It convinces you that you are strong only when you are silent about your needs. That strength is pushing through pain, ignoring sleep, and proving your worth through depletion. But you were never meant to run on empty. Tiredness is not failure, it's feedback. It's your body whispering, "You've done enough for now." And ignoring that whisper doesn't make you powerful. It makes you vanish, slowly, until the only thing left is output. This quote also feeds the illusion that rest is indulgent, that unless you're finished, You haven't earned it. But what if rest is part of the work? What if rest is how you remember who you are beneath the performance? What if stopping isn't quitting, but choosing not to betray yourself? You are not a project to be completed. You are not a machine in need of optimization. You don't exist to finish endless tasks. You exist to feel, to breathe, to live in a rhythm that includes both effort and pause. So, the next time someone says, "Don't stop when you're tired. Stop when you're done," ask them, who gets to decide when you're done? And what happens if you never are? Obsessed is just a word the lazy use to describe the dedicated. It's meant to sound like a badge of honor, like obsession is a compliment, a misunderstood form of greatness. But what if it's not? What if this quote is just another way to glamorize imbalance, to paint burnout as brilliance, to disguise dysfunction as discipline? This quote doesn't celebrate passion, it distorts it. It turns devotion into compulsion. It teaches you that if you care deeply about something, you must throw your whole life at it. That boundaries are for the uncommitted. That rest is for the unambitious. And under capitalism, that belief is incredibly useful. Because obsessed people don't clock out. They don't push back. They don't pause. By equating obsession with dedication, this mindset erases the difference between focus and fixation, between meaning and mania. It tells you that being consumed is virtuous, as long as you're producing, but obsession isn't always passion. Sometimes it's a trauma response. Sometimes it's fear in disguise. And when left unchecked, it eats away at joy, at relationships, at identity. You become your output, nothing more. Capitalism thrives on obsession because it looks like motivation but behaves like submission. Obsessed workers don't need supervision. They supervise themselves. They internalize the grind. They make overwork look aspirational. And those who question that intensity, they're labeled as lazy, jealous, or not serious enough. And that's the clever part. The system doesn't have to shame you. It gets you to shame yourself. You begin to fear stillness. You feel guilty for resting. You view any break as backsliding. Productivity becomes morality. Suddenly, someone else's inability to stop becomes your new standard. And if you can't keep up, you blame yourself, not the impossible pace. But here's the truth. Obsession doesn't prove you care. It proves you're desperate to matter in a system that withholds validation. It proves you've been taught that being enough requires being excessive. That worth is earned through extremes. That silence, solitude, or slowness must be weakness. You don't have to be obsessed to be committed. You can be consistent, present, excellent, without erasing yourself. You can care deeply and still rest, still set limits, still say, "I am enough," even when I'm not producing. And maybe the truly radical act isn't in how far you're willing to go, but in how often you're willing to stop, to ask, is this pursuit growing me or consuming me? Does this goal serve me, or have I become its servant? So, the next time someone calls you obsessed, or implies you should be, pause. Ask who benefits when your entire life becomes a shrine to productivity, and whether dedication to you might look more like balance than burnout. Discomfort is growth. It's the kind of phrase that sounds wise at first. Stoic, mature. Like something you'd hear from a coach, a mentor, a founder, usually right when things start to hurt. It suggests that pain is progress, that the sting of exhaustion or the weight of self-doubt is a sign you're doing something meaningful. But, like many truths repackaged by capitalism, this one has been twisted into a tool of exploitation. Discomfort can signal growth. That's not a lie, but it can also signal harm. It can be your body saying, stop, your mind asking for care, your spirit asking for stillness. And yet, under capitalism, we're taught to treat all discomfort the same, to plow through, push harder, keep going. Because growth, we're told, only lives on the other side of struggle. And if you're not uncomfortable, you're not evolving. But who gets to decide what kind of discomfort is worth enduring, and who benefits when we endure it blindly? In many workplaces, this mindset justifies overwork, underpaid, it's part of the grind, burned out. That's where resilience is forged. Unhappy. Maybe you just don't want it enough. It reframes suffering as a badge of honor, and not just any suffering, but the kind that keeps the machine running. You're praised for staying late, skipping meals, missing life's milestones, all in the name of growth. And yet, this version of growth often has nothing to do with becoming more whole. It's about becoming more useful, more productive, more willing to trade your boundaries for metrics. Discomfort becomes the currency you pay for a shot at success. And the more you can tolerate, the more you're told you deserve. But here's the truth they don't print on posters. Not all discomfort is noble. Some of it is a symptom of misalignment, of being in the wrong place for the wrong reasons, following someone else's definition of progress. And the longer you stay in that kind of pain, the more you normalize it. You start to confuse coping with growing, endurance with strength. You learn to suppress every instinct that tells you this doesn't feel right. True growth isn't about pushing through at any cost. It's about knowing when to lean in and when to step back. It's about distinguishing between the discomfort of expansion and the discomfort of erosion. One builds, the other breaks. Capitalism loves the phrase discomfort is growth because it keeps you questioning yourself, not the system. If you're unhappy, you must not be tough enough. If you're exhausted, you must not be disciplined. The quote isolates the problem within you, never the structure around you. But healing can be growth too. Rest can be growth. Saying no can be growth. Choosing softness in a hard world. That might be the bravest growth of all. So the next time someone tells you to embrace the discomfort, pause. Ask yourself, is this growing me or grinding me down? Good things come to those who hustle. It sounds fair, doesn't it? Like a moral equation. Work hard, stay hungry, keep pushing, and eventually, the universe will reward you. It turns effort into destiny, and it flatters those already exhausted by telling them their pain has a purpose. But underneath that glossy surface lies a very different kind of message. If you're not winning, you're simply not hustling hard enough. Capitalism thrives on this logic. Because if success is earned solely through hustle, then failure becomes a personal flaw. You didn't get the job. You didn't hustle enough. Struggling to pay rent, hustle harder. Burnt out and anxious. That's just the cost of greatness. This belief keeps you running, not toward a destination, but inside a wheel. Hustle culture doesn't reward effort. It demands it indefinitely. It doesn't say, work hard and then rest. It says, work harder, then harder still. There's always someone hustling more, and if you ever stop, you fall behind. So, you say yes to everything. You monetize your hobbies. You turn rest into productivity hacks because the world taught you that slowing down is falling off. But the truth is, hustle alone doesn't guarantee good things. If it did, the hardest working people in the world would also be the wealthiest. And we know that's not true. Migrant workers, single parents, minimum wage staff, they hustle every single day. With no end in sight, their labor keeps society running, yet their lives remain precarious. So clearly, the system doesn't reward hustle, it exploits it. The myth of the hustle acts like a filter. It shows you the few success stories who made it and hides the millions who didn't. It whispers that success is a choice, not a structure, that you can outwork injustice, outpace inequality. But no matter how fast you run, if the race is rigged, effort isn't enough. This slogan also isolates you. When things don't go well, you blame yourself. You don't ask why the housing market is unaffordable or why healthcare drains your savings. You just think, I need to grind more. It's a brilliant trick. It turns systemic failure into personal shame. It keeps the machine running without ever questioning who built it. Real success doesn't come just from hustle. It comes from access, opportunity, rest, and support. From systems designed not to extract, but to uplift. And maybe good things don't just come to those who hustle. Maybe they come to those who help, who organize, who dream beyond individual survival. So, the next time you see that quote on a coffee mug or Instagram post, pause, ask, good things for whom, and at what cost? You get what you work for, not what you wish for. It's the kind of quote that looks great on a gym wall, a motivational poster, or a boss's email signature. It feels empowering at first, reminding you that dreams alone won't deliver results, that wishing isn't enough. But once again, this slogan isn't just about motivation. It's a carefully crafted message designed to blur the line between personal ambition and systemic exploitation. Let's be clear, effort matters. But when we tell people they only get what they work for, we're ignoring every invisible structure that determines who gets to work, who gets noticed, and who gets rewarded. We pretend the world is a level playing field, when in reality, it's a game with hidden rules, inherited advantages, and doors that only open for a few. This quote makes it sound like failure is just a lack of trying, as if the single mom working 2 jobs just isn't hustling hard enough, as if the disabled graduate struggling to find work simply didn't want it badly enough, as if effort is all it takes. But in reality, the connection between work and reward is far from linear. There are people who have worked all their lives and remain in poverty. There are others who inherit wealth, positions, and prestige without lifting a finger. And the myth this quote pushes helps keep that imbalance hidden. Because if you believe success is purely earned, you won't question why some have so much while others have so little. Capitalism loves this phrase because it shifts the burden entirely onto the individual. If you don't succeed, it's not the system, it's you. You didn't grind enough, you didn't sacrifice enough, you didn't manifest your dream the right way. And so, you try harder, sleep less, work weekends, all while the structures that limit your growth remain untouched. And what about the act of wishing itself? The quote treats it like a weakness, as if dreaming is naive. But dreaming is where vision begins. It's how we imagine better lives, fairer systems, softer futures. To wish is human. To hope is resistance. But capitalism doesn't want you to wish. It wants you to comply, to trade imagination for production, to replace dreaming with doing, endlessly. True success, if we dare to redefine it, requires more than work. It requires fairness, access, rest, and room to dream. It requires acknowledging that effort is noble, but it cannot do everything alone. So, the next time someone tells you you get what you work for, remember, there are people who worked their entire lives and were forgotten. And there are people who wished, dreamed, collaborated, and built something better for everyone. You are your only limit. This one feels deeply personal. It tells you that no one is stopping you but yourself, that the only wall between you and success is your own mindset, your own discipline, your own refusal to push through. It sounds empowering, and sometimes it can be, but mostly, it's a lie wrapped in self-help language, because in reality, most limits aren't internal, they're structural, economic inequality, racial bias, gendered expectations, lack of access to education, healthcare, stable housing. No amount of believing in yourself makes rent cheaper. No mindset shift makes student debt vanish. But if you believe the lie, you'll stop asking those bigger questions. You'll start seeing your struggle not as the result of injustice, but as a flaw in your character. This is how capitalism wants it. If you're convinced that your only obstacle is yourself, you'll never organize. You'll never resist. You'll blame your burnout on laziness, your low wage on low ambition, your anxiety on lack of gratitude, and the system. It stays invisible, protected by your silence. The quote isolates you. It tells you not to look around, not to connect your experience to others, not to notice the patterns. It feeds the illusion of total agency, that if you just woke up earlier, worked harder, spoke louder, you could have everything. It says nothing of generational wealth, of connections, of networks built long before you arrived. And it erases the reality that some people are running on tracks with no finish line, while others are born at the podium. You are your only limit sounds uplifting until it breaks you, until you're curled up on the floor, wondering why your best isn't good enough, wondering why you're still stuck despite doing everything right. And instead of compassion, you serve yourself blame, because the quote told you, if you're not there yet, it's your fault. But you are not your only limit. There are limits we didn't choose, barriers we didn't build. And acknowledging that isn't weakness. It's truth. It's where real change begins. When we stop internalizing every failure, we begin to see clearly. We begin to question. We begin to link arms. Your potential is not defined by what you can overcome alone. It's defined by the world we build together, one where limits aren't denied, but dismantled, where success isn't measured by isolation, but by access, dignity, and care. So, the next time you hear someone say, you are your only limit, ask, whose limits are we ignoring to keep believing that? Every second counts. It's the kind of phrase that turns time into a battlefield. Every tick of the clock becomes a moment you should be monetizing, optimizing, maximizing. It's a quote dressed in urgency, but underneath it lies a quiet threat. If you're not doing something productive, you're falling behind. Capitalism thrives on this sense of scarcity. The idea that time is not for living, but for leveraging, that your worth is measured by how much you can extract from each hour, each minute, each breath. Every second counts becomes the drumbeat of the hustle, pushing you to pack your calendar, skip your meals, trade sleep for tasks, and mistake exhaustion for dedication. This isn't about making the most of life. It's about turning life into output. You begin to fear stillness. You feel guilty resting. You scroll through social media and see people running startups at 22, writing books at 25, buying homes before 30. You ask yourself, what have I done today? What did I waste? The quote whispers, hurry, there's no time, be better, do more. But time isn't the enemy. Capitalism just wants you to believe it is. Because when time feels scarce, you'll trade anything to keep up. Your evenings, your passions, your health. You'll buy speed. You'll outsource joy. You'll cut corners on care, friendship, introspection, all for the illusion of catching up to a finish line that never stays still. Every second counts flattens the diversity of life. It makes no room for grieving, for wandering, for days when you're just surviving. It demands linearity, progress, proof, and it punishes softness, the kind that lingers, questions, reflects. But not every second was made to count in the same way. Some seconds are for healing, for watching light change through the window, for crying without rushing, for laughing without multitasking, for remembering who you are outside of what you produce. When we treat every second like a transaction, we forget how to be human. So maybe the truth is this: not every second has to count. Some just need to be felt. Success loves speed. It sounds like a mantra for the ambitious, a line pulled from boardroom posters and startup pitch decks, the kind of phrase that urges you to move faster, decide quicker, outpace everyone around you, because in this version of the world, the first to act wins, the slow get left behind. But what this quote doesn't say is who defines success and who profits when you sprint blindly toward it. Capitalism adores speed, not because it leads to truth or wisdom, but because it compresses reflection. It doesn't want you to pause. Pausing means questioning. It means wondering if what you're building even matters, if what you're chasing is even yours. But when you're moving fast, there's no room for doubt. You just go. You just consume. You just produce. Success loves speed favors the loud, the impulsive, the well-funded. It rewards those already ahead with the resources to move fast without fear. And it punishes those who need time to heal, to learn, to care, to think. It erases the value of slow growth. It mocks rest as weakness. It measures your worth by how fast you scale, not how deeply you root. In this mindset, slowness equals failure, but real success isn't always fast. It's often patient. It takes time to raise a child, to build a movement, to recover from loss, to create something meaningful. The best things in life aren't done at lightning speed. They're done with care. They stretch over seasons, not seconds. Speed becomes a form of control. When everyone is rushing, no one stops to ask who set the pace. And that's exactly what capitalism wants. The faster you move, the less you notice the exploitation under your feet. You become too busy to unionize, too tired to protest, too overwhelmed to dream of something different. Success loves speed is not a universal truth. It's a business strategy, one that turns people into projects and time into a race, one that frames burnout as bravery and slowness as sin. But your life isn't a startup, your worth isn't a timeline, and your success doesn't have to sprint. Let it meander, let it arrive late, let it bloom on its own terms. Be so good they can't ignore you. On the surface, this sounds like empowerment, a call to excellence, an invitation to master your craft until the world has no choice but to notice. But what if being good was never the issue? What if being ignored had less to do with merit and more to do with systems built to keep certain people invisible, no matter how good they are? This quote, like many others in the capitalist playbook, assumes a fair game. It assumes that visibility is earned solely by effort, that recognition is distributed based on talent alone. But in reality, the spotlight isn't neutral. It shines brightest on those who already fit the mold, those with the right background, the right look, the right access. Everyone else is left fighting in the shadows, hoping that being exceptional will somehow tip the scale. Be so good they can't ignore you puts the burden on the individual. It tells the marginalized, the underpaid, the overlooked. It's your fault if they don't see you. You just weren't good enough. Try harder. Be better. Never question the system, only yourself. It ignores bias. It erases gatekeeping. It silences any conversation about privilege, racism, sexism, classism. Because if you're not winning, clearly you just haven't earned it yet. Capitalism thrives on this myth, because as long as you believe success is just a matter of grinding harder, you won't organize, you won't challenge the structure, you'll stay isolated in your hustle, blaming your inadequacy for every closed door. But, let's be honest, history is filled with brilliant people who were ignored. Inventors, artists, thinkers, workers, unrecognized not because they lacked talent, but because they didn't serve power. And it's also filled with mediocrity in high places, propped up by connections, wealth, and inherited access. Be so good they can't ignore you. Sounds inspiring until you realize it's also a form of gaslighting, a way to keep people striving endlessly, blaming themselves for the silence. What if instead we built systems that didn't require you to be extraordinary just to be seen? What if you didn't have to shout to be heard or bleed to be valued? What if being enough was enough? Because real empowerment doesn't say, prove your worth. It says, your worth was never in question. Your only competition is you. It sounds soft, almost wise, a way to shift your focus inward, to stop comparing with others and just aim to outdo yourself. And at first, it feels empowering, like permission to run your own race. But sit with it longer, and you'll start to hear something else. Not compassion, but pressure. Not peace, but performance. Because when you are your only competition, the game becomes infinite. There's always some version of you that could have done more, slept less, worked harder, smiled through the stress. When you're competing against yourself, rest starts to feel like losing. And in a system built on endless growth, that's exactly what capitalism needs. Not better outcomes, just more output from you forever. This quote turns your exhaustion into a moral failing. You're not burned out because the world demands too much. It's just that you haven't caught up to the better version of you yet. It makes struggle deeply personal, while erasing the context that causes it. No mention of broken systems, no space for nuance or needs. Just you versus yourself, in a race where the finish line keeps moving. And maybe that's the most dangerous part. It sounds like self-help, but it works like self-surveillance. It makes you internalize the boss. It convinces you that the mirror is a rival, not a companion. And so, you wake up each day, not asking, how do I feel? But, how can I beat yesterday's me? You don't notice how tired you are, only how far behind you still seem. But, what if you stopped running? What if you let go of this invisible scoreboard? What if growth didn't mean chasing a shinier version of yourself, but learning to be with the one who's already here? You are not a project. You are not a competition. You are not an endless version update waiting to be released. You are a living, breathing human being. And maybe the goal was never to outperform yourself, but to know yourself, to be kind to yourself, to rest without guilt, to grow like something organic, not engineered, uneven, unrushed, real. Let capitalism keep its race. You don't have to join, because you were never meant to win against yourself. You were meant to walk beside yourself, all the way home. Losers focus on winners. Winners focus on winning. It sounds like discipline, like tunnel vision, like something you'd find on the wall of a locker room or the back of a tech bro's laptop. A mantra that says, don't waste time watching others, just work. Simple enough. But like most motivational quotes under capitalism, it doesn't invite reflection, it shames it. Because what this quote really says is, don't look around, don't compare, don't question. Just stay in your lane and keep producing. It glorifies blind focus, a kind of productive detachment, and it labels anyone who pauses to observe, wonder, or criticize as a loser. Because in this worldview, winning isn't about learning or growth. It's about speed, motion, obedience. But focusing on others isn't weakness. It's how we learn. It's how we empathize. It's how we organize. Watching how others succeed, how they struggle, how they're treated differently. These aren't distractions. They're insights. And sometimes they're warnings. In capitalism, though, attention is a threat. Because if you stop long enough to look around, you might start asking real questions. Why are some people always ahead in the race? Why do others never get to start? Why does winning look the same for everyone, but feel empty when you get there? So, this quote tells you, don't look up, don't look left or right, don't ask who designed the race, just run. And yet, we are not built to run alone. We are relational beings. We grow through connection, through shared stories, through seeing ourselves in others, and offering what we've learned in return. Focusing on others isn't failure. It's what makes us human. The truth is, the system wants you isolated. It wants you too busy winning to see the game. Because if you did, you might realize some are sprinting, some are crawling, and some are chained to the start line. And calling that meritocracy is the real joke. So maybe being a loser in this system isn't a flaw. It's a sign you're paying attention, that you care, that you know life isn't a scoreboard, and people aren't obstacles to beat. Because in the end, the ones who focus on others, genuinely, compassionately, are the ones who build something better. And that's worth more than any win. Make money while you sleep. It sounds like freedom, like a life of ease and abundance. Who wouldn't want to wake up richer than when they went to bed? It's framed as the dream, passive income, financial independence, time unchained from effort. But like most capitalist fantasies, it hides the machinery behind the curtain, because this isn't really about freedom. It's about turning every second of your existence into labor. Make money while you sleep turns even rest into a revenue stream. It says, your body may pause, but the hustle must go on. Capitalism doesn't want you to stop. It just wants you to automate, to monetize, to extract value from every breath. And if you're not doing that, you're falling behind. The phrase also plays into a myth, that wealth comes from strategy, not systems, that the rich just think differently, that all you need is discipline, knowledge, and hustle, and soon. You too can earn in your sleep, but it doesn't mention capital, inheritance, access, or the invisible web of privilege that allows one person's sleep to be lucrative while another's waking hours barely pay rent. This quote also erases the labor of others, because when someone makes money while they sleep, someone else is usually awake, working. Fulfillment centers run overnight. Factories hum through the darkness. Gig workers deliver, code, monitor, assemble. The passive income of one is often powered by the active exhaustion of many. But capitalism sells the dream, not the debt. It frames money-making as effortless, when in reality, it's deeply tied to ownership of property, of systems, of people's time. And if you don't own those things, you're not asleep, you're the one keeping the lights on. So ask yourself, do I want freedom or do I want control? Because making money while you sleep is not about liberation from work. It's about leveraging others so you don't have to work. And that's not inherently evil, but it's not neutral either. It asks you to build comfort atop an invisible foundation of labor you don't see. It teaches you to value efficiency over empathy and scalability over sustainability. But maybe rest doesn't need to be profitable. Maybe it's sacred, precisely because it's unproductive. Maybe the real dream is not squeezing income out of your dreams, but dreaming without being squeezed at all. Because you are not a brand, not a business model, not a stream of passive potential. You are a person, and your sleep doesn't owe anyone anything. Level up or get left behind. This quote hits with urgency. It sounds like a wake-up call, a challenge to evolve or be discarded. In the world of gaming, leveling up means growth, mastery, reward. But in real life, especially under capitalism, it's often a demand masked as motivation, a threat wrapped in pixelated progress. Level up or get left behind doesn't leave room for stillness, or healing, or circumstances. It tells you the world moves fast, and if you're not constantly learning a new skill, upgrading your tools, expanding your brand, you'll become irrelevant, obsolete, dead weight. This isn't about becoming better. It's about staying valuable to a system that only values you when you're useful. And that usefulness is always being recalculated. Did you upskill during the pandemic? Are you AI-proof? Can you learn faster, pivot quicker, post more, sell harder? If not, step aside, because someone else will, and the system loves a replacement. Underneath this quote is a fear that capitalism feeds. If you stop, you disappear. It's not enough to be good. You must be better than before. And even then, someone younger, cheaper, faster is already on their way. It creates a culture of anxious acceleration, where rest is guilt and slow is death. But here's the truth. Real life isn't a game. There's no XP bar floating above your head, no final boss to defeat, no leaderboard that measures your worth. You are not behind. You are alive. And the idea of being left behind is only scary if you believe there's one correct path, one race, one timeline. But there isn't. Life branches in a million directions, and sometimes staying where you are is an act of resistance. Sometimes choosing presence over progress is the bravest thing you can do. Because this system will never stop moving the goalposts. You will never level up enough to outrun capitalism's hunger, and you were never meant to. You were meant to grow at your own pace, to evolve not because you're afraid, but because you're curious, to rest without fear of being replaced, to opt out of the game when it no longer serves your soul. So, the next time someone says level up or get left behind, ask them, Left behind by who and to go where? Exactly. Because maybe being left behind just means stepping off the treadmill and remembering that you're not a character in someone else's strategy. You're a person, and you're not behind. You're exactly where you need to be. Stay hungry, stay foolish. It sounds rebellious, inspiring, even. Steve Jobs famously used it to close a graduation speech, urging young minds to remain curious and bold. But in the hands of capitalism, this phrase gets rebranded, not as a call to adventure, but as a justification for exploitation. Stay hungry becomes a command to never be satisfied, never settle, never rest. You should want more of everything. More success, more followers, more money. Ambition is no longer a choice. It's a survival skill. If you're full, if you're content, you're seen as lazy, complacent, replaceable, and stay foolish. That's not about playful creativity anymore. It's a subtle way of saying, don't ask too many questions. Don't overthink the grind. Don't calculate your burnout. Just leap, hustle, fail, repeat, and trust that it'll all pay off someday. But in a system built on unequal odds, staying hungry and foolish often means staying vulnerable, easy to mold, easy to push beyond limits. It glorifies naivety when what we need is clarity. It tells people to embrace discomfort and chaos, while those at the top enjoy stability and control. Underneath it all, this quote keeps you chasing. It paints struggle as noble and uncertainty as a virtue. It asks you to turn your back on caution, on rest, on reason, and replace them with relentless drive. Because a hungry worker keeps moving. A foolish dreamer doesn't organize. They hope, they hustle, they break, and they blame themselves. But what if hunger isn't a virtue? What if it's a warning? What if the goal isn't to stay foolish, but to learn, to grow wise, to recognize patterns, to know when to say enough? Capitalism doesn't want that. It thrives on your endless striving. Your hope that maybe, if you just stay hungry long enough, the feast will come. But you deserve more than breadcrumbs from a banquet you helped build. You don't have to stay hungry to be ambitious. You don't have to stay foolish to take risks. You can dream with your eyes open. You can build without breaking. So eat, rest, learn, and choose your foolishness wisely. Because some risks are worth taking, but some are just distractions in disguise. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's one of the most quoted mantras of resilience, a battle cry, a badge of honor. If you've been through something hard, this quote insists it must have made you better, stronger, tougher, sharper. But in reality, pain doesn't always forge power. Sometimes it just leaves you hurt. This quote turns suffering into a transaction. It suggests that every moment of hardship is secretly a gift. That trauma is just strength in disguise. But that idea is convenient for the system, because if all pain is empowering, then no pain ever has to be addressed, or apologized for, or prevented. Capitalism loves this quote. It lets companies push people to the brink and still call it growth. Overwork becomes character building. Burnout becomes proof of dedication. If you cry at your desk, you're not in distress. You're just getting stronger. But not all pain teaches. Not all struggle leads to strength. Sometimes. What doesn't kill you just lingers. It drains you. It reshapes your nervous system. It takes years to unlearn. And you don't owe anyone a redemption arc. The quote also isolates you. It says, "The burden of strength is yours alone." that your wounds are personal training tools, not reflections of a broken culture. It places all responsibility for recovery on the individual. Instead of asking why so many people are forced to endure in the first place, because the truth is, you shouldn't have to survive just to be seen as worthy. Real strength isn't born from constant injury. It's born from support, from rest, from being allowed to fall apart and be held while you do. And sometimes, you don't need to be strong, you need to be safe. So what if we stopped glorifying pain? What if we honored softness just as much? What if we let people heal without needing to prove how much they suffered first? What doesn't kill you doesn't have to make you stronger. It can just be something you survived. That's enough. You're enough. Fake it till you make it. It's the unofficial motto of startups, social media influencers, and just about every high-pressure environment where appearances matter more than reality. On the surface, it sounds empowering, like a little trick you can use to close the gap between who you are and who you want to be. A form of self-belief. Pretend you're confident until you actually are. Play the part until the role becomes real. But in the hands of capitalism, this mantra transforms into something more insidious. It becomes a mandate to mask your struggle, to hide your uncertainty, to present polished perfection while quietly falling apart. Fake it till you make it teaches us that it's better to look like you're thriving than to admit you're drowning. It praises the illusion of success while ignoring the labor it takes to actually succeed. You don't need rest, just better branding. You don't need support, just a stronger smile. You don't need help. You need hustle with a filter on it. And it creates a culture where vulnerability feels like weakness, where asking questions makes you look unprepared, where honesty might cost you opportunities. So you fake, and you keep faking, until you no longer remember who you are beneath the persona. This quote also places the burden of making it entirely on you. If you don't succeed, it's not because the system is unfair. It's because you didn't fake well enough. You weren't convincing. You didn't play the game right. It rewards performance over substance, style over well-being. Capitalism doesn't care if you're okay. It cares if you look okay. It doesn't care if you're skilled, just whether you can sell the image of someone who is. But here's the truth. Faking it doesn't always lead to making it. Sometimes it leads to burnout, imposter syndrome, disconnection, and deep, chronic shame. You don't have to pretend your way into belonging. You don't have to smile your way through struggle. You don't have to perform success to earn rest, or peace, or dignity. You can be unsure. You can be learning. You can be real. Because what if the most radical thing you can do isn't faking it, but telling the truth? You don't have to become someone else to succeed. The world doesn't need more polished versions of pain. It needs more honest people who are still in progress and still showing up. So, if you're tired of faking it, stop. You're not failing, you're just human. And that's more than enough. Work hard in silence. Let success make the noise. It sounds humble, noble, even classy. A subtle encouragement to keep your head down, stay focused, and let your accomplishments speak for themselves. No need to brag, no need to announce, just grind in silence, and someday, the spotlight will find you. But behind this polished wisdom lies a darker convenience for the system. This quote isn't really about humility, it's about obedience. Because when you work hard in silence, you don't ask for better conditions. You don't question unfair treatment. You don't speak up when something hurts. You don't demand recognition while you're still building. You just keep working. And while you're doing that, grinding quietly, invisibly, others reap the rewards of your silence. Those who already have power are free to take credit, to shape the narrative, to set the rules of the game. Because noise isn't just ego, it's power, it's visibility. And silence isn't always grace. Sometimes it's erasure. Capitalism thrives when workers believe their value will be noticed eventually. When people labor with the hope that someone is watching, that merit will be rewarded, that good things come to those who wait. But more often than not, that recognition never comes. The system isn't designed to reward quiet. It's designed to reward control. This quote also places the burden of making noise on the result, not the person. It tells you that once you've made it, people will finally pay attention. But how many brilliant minds, how many tireless workers, how many creatives, teachers, caregivers, builders never get there because they were never seen, because they work too quietly for a world obsessed with spectacle. Working hard is not the problem. Pride in your craft is not the problem. The problem is when silence becomes a strategy for survival, when people are taught that voicing their needs, their wins, their worth, makes them arrogant or ungrateful. But you're allowed to be visible before you're successful. You're allowed to speak up even if you're still figuring it out. You don't have to mute yourself just to seem noble. Your story doesn't have to wait until the ending to be heard. So yes, work hard. Pour your heart into it. But don't do it silently if silence costs you care, dignity, or joy. Let your voice rise with your effort. Let others witness your process, not just your results. Because success doesn't always make noise on its own. Sometimes it needs you to speak up first. If any of these quotes ever made you feel like you weren't doing enough, just remember, that's exactly how the system wants you to feel. You were never broken. The game was just rigged. Thank you for staying with me through these 30 truths hidden behind pretty lies. If this video made you think, or breathe a little deeper, consider leaving a comment, sharing it, or subscribing to the Hollow Room. Here, we don't chase perfection. We rest, we reflect, and we reclaim our stories, one quiet truth at a time.